Alan Morris sat alone in the corner of the mess hall aboard the USS Horizon. His lunch tray held a simple sandwich and an apple. He ate slowly, eyes fixed on his tablet, scrolling through maintenance reports. No one paid much attention to him. That was normal. Alan had worked as a technician on the ship for 3 years, and most crew members hardly noticed him. The USS Horizon was a research vessel, currently mapping uncharted regions of the Rigel sector. Its mission was peaceful, to study stars, planets, and any signs of life they might find. The ship wasn't built for combat. It carried a crew of 53 scientists, researchers, and support staff. Captain Laura Bailey sat with several officers at a table across the room. She was a tall woman with dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. She discussed the day's findings with Science Officer Doug Hernandez, a serious man who had been with her through 3 deep space missions. "These readings from the gas giant are fascinating," Doug said, pointing to data on his own tablet. "The atmospheric composition suggests..." A sharp alarm cut through the air. Red emergency lights began to flash throughout the mess hall. Bridged to Captain Bailey came an urgent voice over the communication system. "Unknown vessel approaching at high speed. It's massive, ma'am." The captain was already on her feet. "On my way." She turned to her officers. "Battle stations." Though the Horizon wasn't a military ship, they had protocols for encountering unknown vessels. The crew moved quickly, some rushing to their assigned emergency positions, others staying put as required. Alan remained seated. He took another bite of his sandwich. On the bridge, Captain Bailey watched the view screen with growing concern. The approaching ship was unlike anything she had seen before. It was at least 5 times the size of the Horizon, with a design that reminded her of a predatory insect. "Hail them," she ordered. Communications specialist Patricia Walsh, a freckled woman with red hair, tried several frequencies. "No response, Captain. Shields up," Bailey ordered, "and continue hailing." The massive ship came to a stop directly above them. It dwarfed the Horizon completely. Doug checked his instruments. "Their weapon systems are powering up, Captain. We're being scanned." Before Bailey could respond, a strange energy field surrounded the Horizon. All systems flickered and went dark, then came back online at minimal power. "We're caught in some kind of dampening field," Doug reported. "Engines offline, weapons offline, communications limited to internal only." Bailey's face was grim. "Options?" "None, Captain," Doug admitted. "We're trapped." In the mess hall, Alan finished his sandwich and started on his apple. The emergency lights continued to flash, but he showed no sign of concern. Around him, crew members whispered nervously, some trying their communication devices without success. A strange sound filled the ship, like metal scraping against metal. Then came heavy thuds that echoed through the corridors. "They've attached to our hull," someone in the mess hall said. "They're boarding us." 15 minutes later, the doors to the mess hall slid open. Captain Bailey was marched in by creatures that made several crew members gasp. They stood over 7 feet tall, with exoskeletons that shimmered with a metallic green-blue color. Their bodies resembled humanoid insects, with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the light in faceted patterns. They carried weapons that pulsed with energy. One of the creatures stepped forward. Unlike the others, it wore elaborate armor with symbols etched into the plating. When it spoke, a small device on its armor translated its clicking speech into English. "I am Supreme War Leader Kraz Tool of the Zivari Collective. Your vessel is now under our control. Your technology will be studied. Your knowledge will be added to our own. Resistance is pointless." More aliens entered, herding the remaining crew members into the mess hall. Soon all 53 humans were gathered there, surrounded by at least 20 armed Zivari soldiers. Captain Bailey stepped forward. "I protest this violation of our ship. We are on a peaceful research mission. We pose no threat to you." Kraz Tool made a sound that might have been laughter. "Threat? No. You are not a threat. You are a resource. The Zivari Collective has conquered 17 systems. Yours will be the 18th. Our planet has defenses," Bailey said firmly. "Earth is not defenseless. Your primitive weapons do not concern us. Krastul replied. Now, you will answer our questions about your homeworlds, defenses, population centers, and military capabilities. Throughout this exchange, Alan Morris remained in his corner. He had finished his apple and was reading something on his tablet. The Zivari soldiers had somehow missed him during their sweep of the ship. He sat in plain sight, yet none of the aliens seemed to notice him. Doug Hernandez saw Alan and almost called out to him, but something made him stay quiet. Captain Bailey had noticed too. Her eyes briefly met Doug's and a silent understanding passed between them. They would not draw attention to their overlooked crew member. Krastul pointed at Captain Bailey. You, leader, come with us to your command center. You will provide access to your databases and communication systems. Bailey stood tall, showing no fear. And if I refuse? In response, Krastul aimed his weapon at Patricia Walsh. Then your people will suffer one by one until you comply. Don't tell them anything, Captain, Patricia said bravely, though her voice shook slightly. The tension in the room was broken by a small sound, the gentle tap of Alan Morris setting down his tablet on the table. It was hardly noticeable, yet somehow the sound carried across the mess hall. For the first time, Krastul seemed to notice the man sitting alone. The alien commander turned his faceted eyes toward Alan, then quickly looked away again, as if unwilling to stare too long. Who is that one? Krastul asked, pointing one of his forearms toward Alan without looking directly at him. Just a maintenance technician. Captain Bailey answered truthfully. Krastul studied Alan for a moment longer, then turned away with what seemed like deliberate effort. It does not matter. All humans will be processed and studied. Perhaps some will be useful as labor. As the aliens began organizing the crew into groups, Alan continued reading on his tablet. If he was concerned about the invasion of the ship, he showed no sign of it. He simply sat there the same way he did every day during his lunch break, while around him both humans and aliens moved with purpose and fear. One of the Zivari soldiers approached Alan's table, weapon raised. You, join the others. Alan looked up from his tablet. His face showed mild interest, nothing more. His eyes met the compound eyes of the alien soldier. The soldier froze. Its limbs began to tremble slightly. Without another word, it backed away and turned its attention to other crew members. And Alan Morris, seemingly ordinary in every way, simply went back to reading his tablet, as if nothing unusual was happening around him at all. 3 days had passed since the Zivari took control of the USS Horizon. The human crew was confined to the mess hall and nearby crew quarters. Armed guards watched them at all times. The aliens had converted the bridge and engineering sections into their command centers. Captain Laura Bailey had been questioned for hours each day. The Zivari wanted information about Earth's defenses, population centers, and military capabilities. So far, she had given them only basic facts they could have learned from any public database. Your resistance is pointless, Krastul told her, during their latest session. We will learn what we need with or without your cooperation. Bailey remained strong. Then why keep asking me? The alien commander did not answer. Instead, he dismissed her back to the mess hall where the rest of the crew was gathered. Something strange was happening among the Zivari. Doug Hernandez had noticed it first. The science officer was good at observing patterns, and the aliens were definitely acting differently than they had on the first day. They seemed nervous, jumpy. Their conversations with each other included more rapid clicking, sounds which Doug took as a sign of agitation. And strangest of all, they kept looking at Alan Morris. Alan continued his daily routine as if nothing had changed. Each morning, he would sit at his usual table in the corner of the mess hall. He would read reports on his tablet. The aliens had taken everyone else's devices, but for some reason, they had left Alan's alone. At exactly 12:30 ship time, Alan would eat lunch. At 13:15, he would stand and walk to the bathroom. The guards never stopped him. In fact, they moved out of his way when he approached. When Captain Bailey returned to the mess hall, Doug pulled her aside. Something's not right with the aliens, he whispered. Have you noticed how they act around Alan? Bailey nodded. I've seen it. They won't look directly at him, and they keep their distance. I overheard two of them talking, Doug said. Their translation devices were active. They mentioned something called the Silent One and the Watcher. I think they were talking about Alan. Patricia Walsh joined their conversation. Captain, I've noticed something too. The guards change shifts every 6 hours, but the ones assigned to this section keep requesting transfers. They don't want to be here. The three officers looked across the room at Alan. He sat in his corner reading his tablet, seemingly unaware of their discussion. What do they know that we don't? Bailey wondered aloud. Just then, a junior Zivari officer entered the mess hall. It was smaller than the others, its exoskeleton a lighter shade of green. It carried a scanning device and began taking readings around the room. When it reached Alan's corner, it gestured with one of its 4 arms. You. Move from this location. We need to scan this area. Alan looked up from his tablet with mild interest. I always sit here. Move now. The junior officer insisted, raising its voice. The other Zivari guards in the room suddenly became very still. One of them clicked rapidly into its communication device. Alan didn't move. He simply looked at the junior officer with calm eyes. I'm comfortable here. The junior officer reached out as if to grab Alan's arm. Stop. The voice belonged to Kraz Tool, who had just entered the mess hall. Do not touch that one. The junior officer froze. But Commander, the scanning must be complete. Move your scanning to another area, Kraz Tool ordered. His voice contained something the humans had not heard before. Fear. The junior officer backed away from Alan and quickly moved to another part of the room. Kraz Tool approached Captain Bailey. Control your people, he said quietly. Keep them away from that one. Bailey saw an opportunity. Why? What concerns you about Technician Morris? Kraz Tool's compound eyes shifted toward Alan, then quickly away again. Do not draw his attention. It is better for all if he remains undisturbed. He's just a maintenance technician, Bailey said, repeating what she had told the alien commander on the first day. If that is what you believe, then you are fortunate to have survived this long in its presence, Kraz Tool replied. Then he left the mess hall without further explanation. The human crew began to whisper among themselves. All eyes turned to Alan, who continued reading as if nothing unusual had happened. Later that evening, Dr. Samantha Reed approached Doug and the captain. As the ship's xenobiologist, she had been carefully observing the Zivari. I've seen this behavior before, she said quietly. Not in person, but in research footage. Their eye patterns, the way they position their bodies, it's classic prey response to an apex predator. Alan? Patricia whispered in disbelief. He's the quietest person on the ship. He barely talks to anyone. I know it sounds crazy, Dr. Reed continued, but everything about their body language says they're terrified of him, and they're trying not to show it. That night, when most of the crew was sleeping in their makeshift beds in the mess hall, Patricia managed to slip over to Captain Bailey. Captain, she whispered, I've been watching the Zivari at the communication station when they bring me there for questioning. Their communication panel has a language setting. I've been secretly changing it to English when they aren't looking. Good work, Bailey said. What have you learned? They've been sending messages to their homeworld about us, Patricia explained. But most of the messages are about Alan. They keep referencing something called the Observers. According to their messages, these beings supposedly existed before all known civilizations. They just watch and never interfere. And they think Alan is one of these observers? Bailey asked. Patricia nodded. The last message I saw came from their homeworld. It said, confirmation received. The entity matches ancestral records. Do not provoke it. The last species to harm an observer ceased to exist within 1 solar cycle. Their star system is now empty space. A chill ran through the small group of officers. Could it be true? Doug wondered. Could Alan really be something else? They all looked over at Alan's sleeping form. He appeared completely normal. Just a man of average height and build with brown hair that needed a trim. There was nothing remarkable about him at all. We've worked with him for 3 years, Bailey said. Surely we would have noticed something. Would we? Dr. Reed asked. He keeps to himself. He does his job well. He never causes problems. Has anyone here ever had a personal conversation with him that lasted more than 2 minutes? No one answered. They realized that despite working alongside Alan Morris for years, none of them really knew anything about him. So what do we do? Patricia finally asked. For now we watch, Captain Bailey decided. And maybe we use this to our advantage. The Zivari are clearly afraid of him. Perhaps that's a weakness we can exploit. Across the room, Alan Morris shifted slightly in his sleep. For just a moment, the shadows around him seemed deeper than they should be, as if the darkness itself gathered closer to him. Then the moment passed and he was just an ordinary man again, sleeping peacefully amid a ship full of frightened aliens who believed him to be something ancient and powerful. A week had passed since the Zivari captured the USS Horizon. The tension on the ship grew with each passing day. The aliens continued their work, gathering information about Earth and human technology. But their behavior became more and more strange, especially around Alan Morris. The Zivari maintained a precise distance from him at all times. Dr. Samantha Reed had been measuring it. No alien ever came closer than 15 feet to Alan unless absolutely necessary. If he stood and walked anywhere, they moved out of his path, always keeping that exact distance. Alan himself continued his normal routine. He never complained about being held prisoner. He read his tablet, ate his meals, and sometimes performed small maintenance tasks that the aliens did not try to stop. He spoke little to anyone, human or alien. Captain Bailey had decided to test the aliens' fear. She assigned crew members to stay close to Alan during different parts of the day. The Zivari never approached anyone who was near him. It's like he has a force field around him, Doug said as they watched Alan fix a broken light panel. They won't come near anyone who's in his bubble. But why? Patricia wondered. He's not doing anything threatening. Dr. Reed shook her head. That's what fascinates me. He doesn't have to do anything. It's what they believe he could do that terrifies them. Doug had been helping Patricia secretly access more alien communications. They had discovered more references to the observers. According to Zivari legends, these beings were ancient, existing before all known civilizations. They appeared in the form of whatever species they chose to observe. They never interfered in galactic affairs. They simply watched. The legends say they have the power to unmake reality. Patricia explained to the captain. They could erase an entire species with a thought, but they choose not to use their power. They just observe. And they think Alan is one of these beings? Captain Bailey asked. They seem convinced of it, Doug confirmed. But is it possible? Could he really be something other than human? They all looked at Alan, who was calmly replacing the cover on the light panel he had fixed. We need to find out more, Bailey decided. Patricia, can you access their historical records? I want to know why they're so certain about this. Patricia nodded. I'll try, Captain. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Alan finished his maintenance work and approached Captain Bailey. It was rare for him to initiate conversation with anyone. Captain, he said in his quiet voice, I need access to the engine room. There's a problem with the thermal regulators. Bailey was surprised. How do you know that? We're locked out of all engineering systems. I can feel it, Alan said simply. The vibration pattern has changed. If it's not fixed soon, we could lose life support to decks 3 through 5. Bailey didn't question him further. Instead, she went directly to Krazatul with Alan's request. The alien commander's reaction was immediate. He wishes to go to the engine room? There was clear alarm in his translated voice. Yes. He says there's a problem that needs fixing, Bailey explained. A maintenance issue. Krazatul's forearms moved in what seemed like an agitated pattern. If he wishes access, we will not stop him. He issued orders to his guards, who quickly cleared a path. Alan walked to the engine room, followed at a distance by Bailey and Krazatul. The Zivari engineers inside the room quickly moved to the far wall when Alan entered. Without saying a word, Alan went to a control panel, opened it, and began working. His hands moved with confidence, adjusting settings, and replacing a small component he took from his pocket. Krazatul watched nervously. "What is he doing?" he asked Bailey. "Fixing your ship?" she replied, though the Horizon was a human vessel. She was testing how the alien would respond. "His ship," Krastol corrected quietly. "It has always been his." Alan finished his work and closed the panel. "The regulator is fixed," he announced. "Life support systems are stabilizing." A Zivari engineer checked the readings and confirmed with clicking sounds to Krastol that the problem had indeed been solved. Alan turned to leave, and everyone moved out of his way. As he passed Krastol, he paused. "Your people should be more careful with the engine calibrations. This ship wasn't designed for the power fluctuations your equipment causes." It was the longest statement anyone had heard Alan make. Krastol's entire body seemed to freeze as Alan addressed him directly. "We will be more careful," the alien commander promised. Alan nodded and walked back toward the mess hall. When he was gone, Krastol turned to Bailey. "It spoke to me," he said, his voice translator failing to hide his awe and fear. "He," Bailey corrected. "Not it, he's a person." "You still do not understand what walks among you," Krastol said. "We have records of his kind from the ancient times. They take the form of simple beings living among them, watching. They never reveal their true nature unless threatened." He paused. "Or unless they wish to deliver judgment." "Judgment for what?" Bailey asked. "For destruction, for cruelty, for the elimination of potential." Krastol's compound eyes shifted. "The Zivari collective has conquered many worlds. We have eliminated species that would not serve our purposes. Now we wonder if we have been observed all along." Later that evening, Patricia managed to access more of the Zivari historical records. She gathered the senior crew members to share what she had found. "According to their oldest records," she explained, "there was once a species called the Drevnar. They were a powerful empire that ruled this sector 3 million years ago. The records say they captured what they thought was a simple lower life form from a developing world." "An observer?" Dr. Reed asked. Patricia nodded. "The Zivari records describe what happened next. The Drevnar Empire simply vanished. Every ship, every colony, every trace of their civilization disappeared within a single day. The only evidence they ever existed is in the records of other species." The crew fell silent as they considered this information. "Do you think it's true?" Doug finally asked. "Could Alan really have that kind of power?" "I don't know," Bailey admitted, "but the Zivari believe it. And right now, that belief might be our only advantage." That night, as the crew prepared for sleep, a new alarm sounded. The ship's communication system suddenly activated. "Attention USS Horizon," came a voice in the Zivari language, automatically translated by the ship's computer. "This is High Command. Executor Vexmore of the Zivari Collective First Fleet. We have received your distress signal and are approaching your position. Prepare for our arrival." Krastol entered the mess hall, his posture showing clear concern. "The High Command sends a battlecruiser. They do not believe our reports about him." He glanced nervously toward Alan, who was sitting in his usual spot, seemingly uninterested in the announcement. "What will happen when they arrive?" Bailey asked. "Their leader, Vexmore, does not believe in the ancient stories. He will want to test the truth." Krastol's voice dropped lower. "I fear what may happen when he does." As if sensing he was being discussed, Alan looked up from his tablet. For just a brief moment, his eyes met Bailey's across the room. She had never really noticed his eyes before. They were ordinary in color, a simple brown. But for that moment, they seemed to hold something much deeper, like looking into a clear sky and suddenly realizing you're seeing all the way to the stars. The Zivari battlecruiser arrived the next day. It was enormous, nearly 3 times the size of Krastol's ship. The USS Horizon looked tiny beside the 2 alien vessels. Captain Bailey and her senior officers were summoned to the docking bay to meet the new arrival. Alan was not invited, but no one tried to stop him when he joined the group. He stood quietly at the back, his face showing mild interest. The docking bay doors opened. 20 heavily armed Zivari soldiers marched in, forming two lines. Between them walked a figure that made even Kraz-Tul lower his head respectfully. Hi. Command Executor Vexmore was taller than the other Zivari. His exoskeleton was deep purple rather than green, with gold markings that seemed to indicate high rank. He wore no translation device, instead speaking directly in heavily accented but understandable English. So these are the humans, Vexmore said, looking over the assembled crew with what seemed like disappointment. They look weak, soft, not worthy of our concern. Kraz-Tul stepped forward. High Commander, I must warn you about silence. Vexmore interrupted. I have read your reports. Your belief in children's stories embarrasses the collective. He turned to Captain Bailey. Your crew will be transferred to my ship for further study. Your vessel will be dismantled for its technology. Bailey stood firm. We protest this treatment. We were on a peaceful mission when... Peaceful? Vexmore laughed, a harsh clicking sound. The strong do not need peace. The Zivari take what we want. That is the way of the universe. As Vexmore spoke, his eyes suddenly fixed on Alan standing at the back of the group. Who is that one? Kraz-Tul's voice became urgent. That is the one I reported about. The one who matches the ancient descriptions of an observer. Vexmore finished with contempt. You believe this ordinary creature is one of the mythical beings from our oldest stories. He moved closer to Alan, stopping just outside the 15-foot boundary that the other Zivari had always maintained. You? Vexmore addressed Alan directly. Are you this powerful being my foolish commander fears? Alan looked at Vexmore with the same mild expression he always wore. I'm a maintenance technician, he said simply. A technician, Vexmore repeated, turning to Kraz-Tul. You have delayed our conquest because of a repair worker? Kraz-Tul's posture showed clear alarm. Hi. Commander, please, the records are clear. The signs are all present. We must not risk... Enough! Vexmore turned back to Alan. You, step forward. Alan did not move. Vexmore's voice hardened. You will obey or face punishment. I'm comfortable here, Alan replied quietly. The High Commander's patience ended. He gestured to one of his soldiers. Move him. Kraz-Tul made a desperate sound. No, you must not touch... The soldier approached Alan. It was the first time any of the Zivari had deliberately come within the 15-foot boundary. The soldier reached out and pushed Alan's shoulder roughly. The temperature in the docking bay suddenly dropped. Everyone could see their breath in the air. The soldier who had touched Alan froze in place. Cracks appeared in its exoskeleton, spreading like ice forming on a pond. The creature made no sound as its body began breaking apart from the inside. Alan gently took the dying soldier's arm and helped lower it to the floor. His expression never changed. He looked at the creature with mild interest as it stopped moving. Then he returned to his place and stood quietly as before. The room was silent. Every Zivari, including Vexmore, took several steps back. What did you do to it? Vexmore asked, his confident tone replaced by shock. I didn't do anything, Alan said. He touched me. That was his choice. Captain Bailey had watched the scene with as much surprise as the aliens. Now she saw an opportunity. She stepped forward, addressing Vexmore. High Commander, perhaps now you understand Kraz-Tul's concerns. It would be wise to release our ship and let us continue our journey. Vexmore was still staring at Alan. A trick, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Some human technology. We don't understand. Shipwide alarms suddenly began to sound. A Zivari officer rushed into the docking bay. High Commander, power fluctuations are occurring throughout both vessels. Systems are failing randomly. Another officer entered. Weapons, systems are offline. Communications with the homeworld are cut. Vexmore's compound eyes darted back and forth between the officers and Alan, who stood perfectly still, showing no reaction to the chaos. Kraz-Tul moved closer to Captain Bailey, keeping his voice low. It has begun. The judgment. What judgment? Bailey asked. Alan hasn't done anything except defend himself. The legends say observers only reveal their power when they have decided a species' fate. Kras'Tul's voice trembled. Please, you must speak to it. Ask what it wants from us. Bailey considered for a moment, then nodded. She walked over to Alan, aware that every Xivari was watching her with a mixture of fear and awe. Alan, she said, quietly. These aliens believe you're something called an observer. They think you have the power to destroy them. What's happening to their ships right now? Alan looked at her with his ordinary brown eyes. The power systems are overloading. Their equipment wasn't properly calibrated for interface with our systems. That's all? Bailey asked. Just a technical problem? Alan nodded. I could fix it. And will you? If you ask me to. His tone was the same as always. Polite, slightly distant, completely unworried. Bailey turned back to Vexmore and Kras'Tul. He says he can fix your ships, but I think you should consider leaving peacefully once the repairs are made. Vexmore had lost his commanding presence. He looked from the dead soldier on the floor to Alan, then to the ship's walls as the lights flickered around them. Ask it what it wants, Kras'Tul pleaded again. Bailey sighed and turned back to Alan. They want to know what you want from them. For the first time, Alan looked slightly surprised. He glanced at the frightened aliens, then back to Bailey. I was just sitting here, he said. I didn't want anything from them. This simple statement seemed to affect the Xivari more than anything else. Several of them made reverent gestures with their forearms. Tell them I'll fix their power systems, Alan continued. But I'd like them to leave afterward. I have work to finish on Deck 7 and they're being disruptive. Bailey couldn't help but smile as she relayed this message. The idea that Alan was more concerned about finishing his maintenance tasks than dealing with an alien invasion was completely in character for him. Vexmore looked at the lifeless body of his soldier, then at the flickering lights. Finally, he turned to Kras'Tul. Prepare for departure once the systems are restored. We will report that this sector is not suitable for colonization at this time. As the aliens hurried to follow these orders, Captain Bailey watched Alan walk calmly toward the engineering section, the Xivari parting before him like water around a stone. She wondered, not for the first time, who, or what, Alan Morris really was. The Xivari were preparing to leave. Alan had fixed the power systems on both alien ships in less than an hour. The dead soldier had been taken away. Now Kras'Tul and Vexmore stood in the conference room of the USS Horizon with Captain Bailey and her senior officers. Alan sat quietly at the far end of the table. Before we depart, we request a formal meeting with him, Kras'Tul said, glancing nervously at Alan. There are questions our people would ask of an observer. Bailey looked at Alan. Would you be willing to speak with them? Alan nodded. That's fine. The room felt tense as Alan finally addressed the aliens directly. Everyone was still processing what they had seen in the docking bay. The human crew was just as curious as the Xivari about who or what Alan really was. You may ask your questions, Alan said simply. Kras'Tul stepped forward, his movements respectful. Our oldest records speak of beings who existed before all others, watchers who take the form of younger species. Are you one of these observers? Alan was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. Yes, though we call ourselves the witnesses, not observers. The translation isn't perfect. A soft clicking sound spread among the Xivari. Even Vexmore seemed shaken by this confirmation. How long have you... Doug Hernandez couldn't finish his question. Been watching? Alan finished for him. We've existed since before the first stars formed. We've witnessed the birth and death of countless galaxies. And you look human because, Dr. Reed asked. I chose this form, Alan explained. I've been many things over the eons. For now, I'm human because I find humanity interesting. You're curious in ways that remind me of the early universe, full of possibilities and questions. Our records say your kind can destroy entire civilizations with a thought, Vexmore said. Is this true? Alan shrugged. We can. We rarely choose to. The universe creates and destroys quite efficiently without our help. Yet you killed my soldier, Vexmore accused. No, Alan corrected gently. He died because he chose violence. I am what I am. My true nature exists beyond this form. When anything tries to harm that nature directly, there are consequences. I didn't choose his death. He chose to touch what cannot be touched in that way. Patricia leaned forward. But we've touched you before. I bumped into you in the corridor last month. Nothing happened. Intent matters, Alan explained. You meant no harm. The soldiers. Intent was to force, to hurt, to dominate. The universe reacts differently to different intentions. Captain Bailey had been watching Alan carefully. How long have you been on my ship? 3 years, 2 months, 17 days, Alan answered precisely. Before that, I was a farmer in Iowa for 70 years. Before that, a monk in Tibet for nearly a century. I usually stay in one form for about a human lifetime. Why maintenance? Bailey asked. You could have been anything. Captain, scientist, diplomat. Alan smiled slightly. Maintenance lets me see everything, touch everything, understand how things work. People don't notice maintenance workers. They talk freely around us. And the work itself is satisfying. Fixing things, keeping systems running. It's a good way to understand a society. Krastul stepped forward again. Our people have conquered many worlds. We have destroyed species that would not serve us. Will you judge us for this? The room grew very quiet. Everyone felt the weight of the question. Alan looked at the alien. Commander, it's not my place to judge. I witness, I understand, that's all. But the Drevnar, Krastul pressed. The records say they captured one like you and their entire civilization vanished within a day. The Drevnar, Alan nodded. I remember them. They didn't vanish because they captured one of us. They vanished because of what they tried to do. Afterward, they attempted to harness the fundamental forces of reality itself. They were warned. They didn't listen. Alan stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Everyone watched him, both humans and aliens. Your civilizations are young, he continued. You're like children playing with fire. Some rules exist not because they were created, but because they are woven into the fabric of existence itself. The Drevnar broke those rules. The universe responded. He turned back to the room. I'm not here to judge the Zivari, but I will tell you this. Species that survive the longest are those that learn to coexist. Conquest and destruction lead only to eventual self-destruction. That's not a threat. It's simply how the universe works. Vexmore and Krastul exchanged glances. Something in Alan's calm statement seemed to affect them deeply. We will bring your message to our people, Krastul said finally. We will tell them the humans are under observation. Alan nodded. That would be wise. The Zivari prepared to leave. As they were about to exit, Vexmore turned back. Will you stay with these humans? Yes, Alan replied. My shift doesn't, and for another 3 years. The matter-of-fact way he said this, as if his cosmic witnessing was just another job with regular hours, made Captain Bailey smile despite herself. After the aliens departed, the crew of the USS Horizon gathered in the mess hall. The Zivari ships had vanished into deep space, leaving them alone again. Everyone was looking at Alan, who had returned to his usual corner table with his tablet. Captain Bailey approached him. So what happens now? Now? Alan looked up. Now, I finish checking the environmental systems on Deck 7. Then I'll run diagnostics on the backup generators. I meant with you, Bailey clarified, now that we know what you are. Nothing changes, Alan said. I'm still your maintenance technician. I still have a job to do. But you're ancient, powerful. Bailey struggled to find the right words. Why stay with us? Why fix our machines? And live in a small cabin on a research vessel? Alan was quiet for a moment, then he said, Have you ever stood on a beach, Captain? Watched the waves come in and out, each one different yet part of the same ocean? That's what your lives are like to me. Beautiful, unique patterns in the cosmic flow. Worth watching, worth experiencing. And you'll just keep pretending to. Be human? Doug asked from nearby. I'm not pretending, Alan replied. When I choose a form, I live it fully. I feel what humans feel. I experience what humans experience. The only difference is that I remember being other things too. Dr. Reed stepped forward. Will you tell us about what you've seen? All the civilizations, all the history? If you ask, Alan said. But most of it wouldn't make sense to you, and some knowledge isn't helpful for developing species. Captain Bailey made a decision. Well, observer or witness or whatever you call yourself, you're still part of this crew, and we have a mission to complete. Alan nodded. I'd like that. Life on the USS Horizon slowly returned to normal. The crew continued their exploration of the Rigel sector. Reports were filed about the Zavari encounter, though some details were left purposely vague. And in the corner of the mess hall, Alan Morris continued his quiet routine, reading his tablet, eating his meals, and occasionally sharing a story. About stars that died billions of years ago or civilizations that rose and fell before Earth's sun was born. He was still just sitting there. But now everyone understood why the aliens had begged for mercy.